Okay, so now we start the process of putting everything back together. And in doing so, I didn't really think this was going to be too much of a big job, but I spotted something that might actually make it even easier. I had kind of noticed this before, but the thermostat housing actually can be put into two pieces. So you see I've got the this pipe here and this pipe here disconnected, and there's like a little clip that clips onto the side of this. Actually, sorry, I'm holding it upside down. Clips down here. So these, you can see these two, there's like two catches, and in the middle of the picture there, they can be clipped together with a little plastic clip, and this can be slid on, and there's a rubber washer to stop it leaking. So what you can do, it would appear, and maybe this would have been easier to take it apart and not requiring the, I don't know, I think I still would have had to take it off the throttle body, but I'm going to put this piece on, put the throttle body back together, then I'm going to put this on. That might make it easier to get the throttle body bit back on again. I'll put the back piece of the throttle body on, put this on, put the front piece of the throttle body on, and should be all set. So thinking this is going to be a pretty quick job. Did have to get some new screws because of the fact that you know, these screws are pretty messed up. Some of them did get stripped. So these are just from Lowe's. These are just these are metric 1 by 6, I think is what they're called, and I got 25 millimeters long, and you can see they're not going to be too long, so that they're not going to get stuck and not go all the way in. Need washers, but they're just about the right length, and the stainless steel, so they should, well, they're maybe not as good as like anodized or whatever, but they should be okay. So I got 8 of these from Lowe's, so it probably cost me about $9 or something like that. So these are going to go on there, 8 of those, and we should be all set. All right, first part done. Used, oh, damn it. Oh well, I'll get that later. Used quarter inch extended socket with a hex key on the end of it to tighten these in a kind of cross pattern. So I got them all nice and kind of tight, hopefully not overly tight. Didn't use a torque wrench or anything, but I tightened this down and did it in such a way that I wasn't like doing all one corner and then another. Kind of slowly went around, tightened it up a little bit at a time. So that's that first piece on. Next, back of the throttle body. All right, so now you see that the two things that were the hardest to get to are now back on again. The bolts that are kind of difficult to get to, such as like this one back here, obviously nowhere near as hard to put back on as they were to get off, just because there was, partly because this piece is not here, so the front piece of the housing hasn't been put on yet, and I think obviously that was by design, but obviously just, you know, taking pieces out that are stuck and not being able to really see what you're doing is obviously getting more difficult than putting it all back together again. So this is where we are right now. Next thing I'm going to do is put the actual housing for the thermostat back on, bolt it on with the 4 bolts, clip this on, and then finally put the throttle body back together, put the inlet hose on, and we'll be pretty much done. Just want to show you this bit here, because this is just a little bit tricky. It helps if you've got a ratcheting wrench to get on this 10 millimeter bolts down here that hold on some sort of actuator that goes onto the back of the throttle. I'm not even going to try to explain what that does because I have no idea, but this thing goes on, and the bolts get pretty rusty, but you have to pop these two on here with a metal washer in between them. So those are going on right now. A little bit stiff, but it shouldn't be too bad, just because this bit here does get pretty badly rusted. So this will be done in a minute. Right, getting quite close to being finished now. The thermostat housing is on. This was a little bit tricky just because there's, you know, there's an opposite bolt to this one underneath, and you can only get to that just by kind of feeling around. You can't see down there, and then there's two more holding this thing on back here and underneath, and again you can't see those. You have to feel your way around. But this is on. This is tightened in place. I have not stuck this little clip back on. To be honest, I don't even think it's really needed. It can't go. This little clip can't really be securing it. I think it was probably just for shipping purposes. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't on the one that was dismantled. I don't think this had the clip in place when I took this off. There's the bit where the clip would go, but pretty sure it wasn't on there. So the next thing to do is going to be put the throttle body housing back on, and this is going to go onto here, and then put a few pipes and cables back together, hook up a few cooling lines, and we should be all done. So I don't think this is going to take too much longer. Then we get to check it out. One of the things I realized after actually getting the getting the throttle body back on again, was that this hose here actually needs to go underneath it, and so I'm going to have to take it back off again to get this hose to feed underneath, so that it plugs in on this side. So I'm going to take it off, put it back on again. So I have almost all the hoses clipped back on again now. I had disconnected this hose that goes here, this pipe at the back, the two hoses on each side of this actuator thing, hose down here, this mainline hose here had to be taken off because that goes to the throttle body. This one had been taken off. Electrical connectors, there was one down here that I put on before I put the throttle body back on. This electrical connector and this one. So with all that hooked up, there's only one hose that's not hooked up at this point, and that's the one that goes across the top of the radiator. So I'm going to put the radiator fan back on, hand tighten it, and then I'll be ready to spin up the engine. So this is going to be the last part of the video. Everything's been put back together again, and I've driven the car around now for a couple of days to verify that it's not leaking or overheating or doing anything else related to the cooling system. So everything's working well, but it wasn't quite the smooth transition between just putting everything back together again and then taking it out for a drive and everything working. I think what happened was after I put everything back up together and started the engine, I noticed that it was taking a long time for the engine to warm up. So I took it out for a quick drive, and when the engine did warm up, it went to immediately to the point where it was starting to, steam was coming out from underneath the hood. And when I checked, I kind of knew that this was going to happen, but the coolant reservoir was full, but I knew that I had lost quite a bit of coolant in the whole process of, well, not the actual repair itself, but when the cooling system, when that thermostat housing cracked, I was gushing and squirting coolant all over the engine bay for quite some time. So I knew I'd lost some coolant, and it didn't make sense that the cooling system was going to be full, even though the bottles showed that it was. So what does that mean? That means that there's coolant in the reservoir tank, but it's not going everywhere else in the engine. And if the engine's running, then it seems to me you got one of two issues, let's say three issues. A blockage somewhere, the coolant pump not working, or, and this is the one that I'm pretty sure it turned out to be, just trapped air in the system. So running the engine and trying to put in coolant, you have to get the air out of the system, otherwise the coolant can't get everywhere. There doesn't seem to be a bleed valve on any of the cooling pipes, with the exception of one on top of the cooling tank. which that one seems to be completely pointless because you can just take the cap off the coolant reservoir. So like, what's the point of having a bleed valve there? So I needed to bleed air from other parts. So after struggling with it for a little while, I was running the engine and I disconnected one of the cooling pipes that ran into the top of the throttle body. I remember I had to take off a couple of pipes there, smaller diameter ones, and there was also a pipe that runs across the top of the radiator and into the top of the radiator. That one seemed to be a good one to try as well, because if there was any air trapped in the radiator, I should be able to get it out. So just doing that, bleeding the system, topping it up, letting it run some more, topping it up again. It's not necessarily going to be a perfectly smooth process where you don't get any overheating problems. But it's once you start worrying about the fact that it might be something like a blockage, or what I was worried about was like the heat, maybe the overheating had caused the water pump to fail. I could have replaced the water pump, but it would have been a good time to replace the water pump. But I was also kind of worried that I might have some cylinder head gasket damage, and I wanted to run the engine and verify that that wasn't going to be any problem before I invested in a new water pump. So it doesn't look like I've got any permanent damage. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. I don't have any problems related to the head gaskets leaking yet. There doesn't appear to be any signs of lost power or burning oil or coolant. So it doesn't look like the damage has occurred, at least not to the point where it's currently visible. I might have taken a few thousand miles off the head gaskets by overheating the engine, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. So that's where we are. Hopefully the videos, the taking it all apart and putting it all back together again is useful, because I couldn't find the same 2007 Range Rover Sport with the 4.4 litre V8, I think it is. I think it's 4.4. Yeah, anyway, I couldn't find a 2007 Range Rover Sport with that engine that had the same issue. So hopefully if you find a crack in the thermostat housing, you'll be able to do this repair and maybe even do it a little bit faster than I did, because of the fact that it was, for me, an exploration and something that took me a couple of hours a night for, well, not a couple of hours a night, but probably I put about 4 hours of work into this, and it probably shouldn't take that long, but maybe you can do it faster. So hopefully you find this helpful. I'll see you again soon.